You guys want to hear a wild story? Imagine signing up for a spy school where emotional manipulation is on the syllabus and the final exam is seduce or die. I know, right? Who would be that stupid? But here we are in good old Mother Russia. Dominika here is about to uncover her uncle's dirty little secret, but she won't be sticking around long enough to do anything about it. Nope, she's being shipped off to whore school. Oops, sorry, Sparrow Academy, where bear it all takes on a whole new meaning. But let's get one thing straight. Dominika is not about to let these people step all over her in 4K. She's gearing up to serve her own brand of revenge. And trust me, it's so ruthless, it'll make government spy agencies look like daycare centers. Buckle up. In Russia, the story kicks off with Dominika Egorova, a ballerina so famous she could probably pirouette her way out of a traffic jam. Unfortunately, she's got more than dance routines on her plate. She's also the sole caregiver for her sick mother, who's stuck in a depressing loop of doctor visits and caretakers. Dominika, like the dutiful daughter she is, leaves her mom in the hands of a nurse and heads to the theater, where tonight's performance promises a mix of grace, art, and unwanted groping. Among the evening's special guests is her creepy-as-hell uncle, Ivan Yegorov, who just happens to be the deputy director of Russia's Secret Service. Because every dysfunctional family needs at least one shady government official. Alongside him is Dmitry Ustinov, a mobster with all the charm of a used car salesman and none of the tact. This guy demands a photo op with Dominika, and because being gross is apparently his hobby, uses it as an excuse to grope her. Classy, right? The show must go on though, or at least it tries to. Dominika takes the stage and dances like her life depends on it, but her partner decides tonight's the night to audition for America's worst ballet moves. He botches a lift and crashes down on Dominika's leg, snapping it like a twig. Cue the end of her career and the beginning of her nightmare. Meanwhile, in the not-so-cold shadows of espionage, we meet Nate Nash, a CIA operative who probably has trust issues listed as his defining character trait. Nate's evening takes a turn when he gets a cryptic phone call, the kind with enough coded phrases to make you wonder if spies just can't talk normally. He deciphers the message and gears up for a rendezvous in a park, because obviously sketchy meetings in poorly lit areas scream, great idea. As Nate strolls into the park, he clocks a tale, because what's a spy movie without someone being followed? Enter Marble, a mysterious figure whose code name suggests he's either a secret agent or a countertop salesman. The two pass each other and Nate slips him a package with all the nonchalance of someone pretending they didn't just hand off state secrets. The car's still on Nate's ass, so he does what any badass spy would do, improvise like hell. He fires a shot into the ground, not because it'll stop the car, but because nothing says fuck off like a sudden gunshot. With the car now chasing him instead of Marble, Nate bolts through the streets like he's in an action movie montage. Somehow he makes it to the safety of the American embassy, where he's greeted by police and what's left of his dignity. Inside, his bosses drop the good news and bad news. Marble's safe, but Nate? Yeah, his screw-up just earned him a ticket back to the US. Cut to Russia, where Ivan Yegorov and Colonel Zakharov are having a high-stakes gossip session with General Vladimir Korchnoi. They review surveillance footage of Nate's Little Park rendezvous, confirming what they already suspected, Nate's CIA. But their main focus isn't the guy who just yeeted himself back to America. It's the mystery man he met. Whoever he is, they want his identity like a junkie wants their next fix. Meanwhile, Dominika wakes up in a hospital bed, her leg encased in enough metal to double as a makeshift satellite. Reality hits her harder than her dance partner did. She'll never dance again. She breaks down, her dreams crushed, her future looking bleak as hell. Fast forward 3 months. Dominika's hobbling around with a cane, trying to piece her life back together when her uncle Ivan shows up like the Grim Reaper with bad news. He casually tells her she's been replaced at the ballet, and by the way, no more fancy apartment or covered medical bills for her mom. He doesn't sugarcoat it because, you know, Ivan's about as warm and fuzzy as a Siberian winter. Before leaving, he slides her an envelope and offers her a way out, like some shady deal maker straight out of a bad gangster flick. Inside the envelope, a visual and auditory punch to the gut. Photos show her ex-dance partner cozied up with her replacement, and the recording confirms the ultimate betrayal. Her accident wasn't an accident. The asshole deliberately sabotaged her so his girlfriend could steal her spotlight. Dominika doesn't take this revelation lying down. Later, she heads to the theater, watching the backstabbing duo rehearse like nothing ever happened. After their practice, she follows them to the steam room, where they're busy sweating in ways that have nothing to do with exercise. Seeing red, Dominika snaps. She grabs her cane and goes full-on John Wick, beating the crap out of both of them. When she's done, she storms out, leaving a trail of rage, heartbreak, and probably a couple of concussions. On the bus ride home, Dominika notices her hands are stained with blood. And not the, oops, I cut myself peeling potatoes kind. It's the, I just beat 2 people into next week variety. Freaked out and trying to keep her composure, she hops off the bus and heads to a payphone. With her best innocent civilian voice, she calls in the incident as an accident because nothing screams plausible deniability like, oops, my cane slipped, repeatedly. When she finally gets home, she's hit with another nightmare. Her mother's collapsed on the bathroom floor. The caretaker? MIA. Turns out the theater stopped paying for her services. Classic Russian hospitality, break your dreams, then cut your benefits. Completely out of options, Dominika turns to her shady Uncle Ivan. Because who better to solve your problems than the guy who looks like he moonlights as a Bond villain? Ivan agrees to help, but of course, there's a catch. There's always a catch. He hands her a case and explains the mission. Cozy up to Dmitry Ustinov, the sleazy gangster from the theater, and get him to spill his secrets. Dominika's like, hell no, but even plays the guilt card, reminding her that without him, her mom's next hospital trip will look more like a death sentence. That night, Dominika reluctantly suits up in the killer dress Ivan gave her, because nothing says seduction and espionage like Russian couture, and heads to Ustinov's hotel. At the bar, she plays her part, letting Ustinov make the first move. The slimeball takes the bait and invites her to his room, probably thinking he's about to star in his own personal James Bond fantasy. Once inside, Dominika charms her way past his guards and into a private moment. But when Ustinov gets down to business, quickly stripping and demanding she follow suit, things take a hard left turn. Just as she's bracing herself, a man in a black helmet materializes out of nowhere, like the Grim Reaper's quieter cousin. Before Ustinov can finish being a creep, the guy slashes his throat in one smooth motion. Ustinov hits the floor, and Dominika's left standing there, covered in blood and disbelief. The assassin silently tosses her a coat, like he's her murder fairy godmother, and gestures for her to shut up and follow. She does because, what's the alternative? Together they slip out the back, leaving Ustinov's body cooling on the carpet and Dominika with one hell of a story to process. As they make it to the parking lot, the assassin casually ends a hotel employee like he's checking off a grocery list, milk, eggs, murder, before throwing Dominika onto his motorcycle. Apparently, subtlety isn't in his job description. They speed off to some sketchy abandoned building because, you know, where else would Russian spies hang out? Inside, the guy finally removes his helmet, revealing himself to be Sergei Mataron, another of Ivan's pet agents. Real original twist there, Ivan. Speaking of Ivan, he's in another room, watching all this go down with General Korchnoi like it's primetime reality TV. Korchnoi, ever the pragmatist, suggests tying up the witness problem with a bullet, but Ivan, he's like, nah, she's got potential, which is spy speak for, let's ruin her life a little more and see what happens. Ivan steps in for some one-on-one time with Dominika, who, let's be honest, looks like she's 2 seconds away from drop-kicking him with her cane. He lays it all out. He knew the hotel scene would go down exactly as it did, but conveniently left that detail out because, well, honesty is for losers. Then comes the ultimatum. Join a glorified Hunger Games of seduction and espionage, or die. Classic motivational speech. Left with no real choice, Dominika signs up for Sparrow School. Because what's a little psychological trauma when your other option is, you know, death? A few days later, she arrives at Sparrow Academy, aka Sparrow School, where she's greeted by Matron, the head mistress, who looks like she drinks vodka for breakfast and eats hope for lunch. Matron wastes no time assigning Dominika a fake identity and showing her to her room, which probably doubles as a cell. Then it's time for class, where Matron kicks things off with a lecture straight out of a villain's manifesto. The world's a mess, Russia's the hero, and everyone else can suck it. The students are here to learn how to seduce, manipulate, and generally wreck lives. Fun times. One of the first lessons? Humiliation 101. Matron calls Dominika and some guy named Victor to the front and tells them to strip. Victor? He's already halfway out of his pants before she finishes the sentence. Dominika? Hell no. This earns her a verbal smackdown from Matron, who clearly isn't a fan of individuality. Meanwhile, across the globe, Nate's busy playing America's Most Grounded. At a CIA disciplinary hearing, he's informed he's suspended for that Little Russia snafu. He argues that Marble, his mole, will only trust him, but the suits don't care. Rules are rules, even if they're stupid. Back at Sparrow School, Matron is cranking up the manipulation lessons. During one exercise, she shows the class a series of videos and has them analyze the targets. Victor, clearly not the brightest tool in the shed, screws up his analysis. Dominika swoops in with the right answer, earning Victor's scorn and proving she's the Hermione Granger of spy school. Things get darker with the next assignment. Matron picks a female student to seduce a handcuffed man from one of the videos. The girl breaks down, and Matron drops the classic "control your emotions" lecture, reminding everyone that being a sparrow is about turning off your humanity on command. Charming, right? Meanwhile, Nate's paranoia kicks in as he starts noticing people tailing him. He reports it to his superiors, who probably roll their eyes before realizing, oh crap, Marble's gone radio silent. Nate uses this to guilt-trip them into letting him move to a nearby country to potentially lure Marble out. Though he's still banned from Russia, bureaucracy at its finest. Back at the hellhole, Sparrow School, the students are assigned a new mission: entertain some soldiers fresh from war. Dominika picks a young soldier and seduces him like a pro, but when the videos of the encounters are reviewed, Matron's not impressed. She commends Dominika's technique, but accuses her of holding back emotionally, as if turning into a seduction robot is something to aspire to. Dominika's new life? Yeah, it's shaping up to be one giant dumpster fire. After class, Dominika heads to the showers, probably hoping for a moment of peace in this twisted hellscape of a school. But nope, enter Victor, the class jackass, ready to settle some non-existent score. Victor charges at her like a budget action hero, but Dominika isn't having any of it. In a move straight out of a DIY survival manual, she rips a fucking water tap off the wall and uses it to beat him down. Victor ends up a bruised puddle on the floor, and Dominika barely even breaks a sweat. Meanwhile, the Russian brain trust, Ivan, Korchnoi, and Zakharov, are sitting around discussing Nate's new digs in Budapest. They're itching to make a move, but are too scared to piss off the US president, who's apparently been handing out warnings like Halloween candy. Ivan suggests handing the dirty work off to someone else because why not delegate when things get messy? Back at Sparrow School, Matron and Korchnoi confront Dominika about her incident with Victor. Matron surprisingly sees potential in Dominika, probably because anyone who can fend off an attack with plumbing equipment deserves a second chance. Korchnoi, however, wants a private chat. Once alone, he grills her about her loyalties. Dominika, stone cold as ever, swears her allegiance to Mother Russia and not her idiot classmates. That's enough for Korchnoi, who sends her back to class with a nod that practically screams, "You've got balls, kid." The next lesson? Oh, it's a doozy. Dominika is dragged to the front of the room, while Korchnoi watches from his pervy little spy camera. Matron shows her a picture of Victor. Yeah, the same guy she just wrecked, and asks what he wants. Spoiler, it's not therapy, though he probably needs it. When Victor struts into the room, Matron orders Dominika to give him what he wants. Victor, puffed up like he's the king of sparrows, demands she turn around. Dominika, however, has other plans. She undresses slowly, taunting him with every move. Then, in the ultimate power play, she sits on the table, legs wide, and dares him to do something. Victor, overwhelmed and under-equipped, can't rise to the occasion. Humiliated, he storms out while Dominika coolly tells Matron, what Victor really wants is power. Mic drop. Korchnoi, watching from his surveillance lair, is clearly impressed. Later, Matron calls Dominika in for a private chat. Instead of a lecture, she tells Dominika that she's heading back to Moscow. Great, because one nightmare wasn't enough. Fast forward a few days, and Dominika is reunited with her mother at home. The warm, fuzzy moment doesn't last, though, because Ivan summons her to some fancy restaurant. Over dinner, she doesn't even touch. Ivan lays out her next mission: Budapest. Her target? Nate Nash. Her job? Get cozy, earn his trust, and figure out who the mole is. He hands her a shiny new passport and alias, like this is some fucked up graduation gift. Dominika, unfazed as ever, takes the documents and walks out. Ivan can keep his meal and his bullshit. Dominika touches down in Budapest looking like she just walked out of a spy magazine. Cool, calm, and already over this shit. She's assigned a shared apartment with another sparrow, Marta, who seems about as friendly as a hungry rattlesnake. Shortly after settling in, Dominika meets her new handler, Maxim Volantov, a guy who probably moonlights as a Bond villain. She requests details about Nate, and Volantov reluctantly hands over the intel, clearly wondering why she's not doing cartwheels to impress him. Over the next few days, Dominika does what all good spies do. She becomes a certified stalker. She follows Nate around Budapest, mapping out his schedule like she's prepping for a pop quiz on how to meet a CIA agent without looking creepy. Eventually, she picks the local swimming pool as her battleground. Post-swim, she strategically positions herself so Nate has no choice but to notice her, and they engage in some light banter. Dominika plays the mysterious embassy translator card, all, "Who, me? Suspicious? Never." But Nate is no idiot, and the next day he's a no-show. Suspicious as hell, Dominika interrogates the receptionist, only to find out her ID has mysteriously vanished. Cut to Nate, who's already pieced together that Dominika isn't your average poolside flirt. He presents his findings to his superiors, pointing out her multiple identities and her connection to Ivan. "She's either a spy or the worst tourist in history," Nate quips. His bosses decide to let him keep digging, probably because no one else wants to deal with her. Meanwhile, Dominika reports back to Volantov, who's about as supportive as a broken chair. She asks for an embassy pass, and Volantov begrudgingly agrees, clearly wishing she'd disappear. During her visit to the embassy, she spots Marta chatting up Stephanie Boucher, an American politician with secrets practically spilling out of her purse. As Dominika watches from a distance, Nate appears out of nowhere, casually confessing he swiped her ID at the pool. "You're either really bad at spying or really good at playing dumb," he teases before inviting her to dinner. Dominika accepts because why not mix espionage with a dinner date? Back at the apartment, Dominika decides to play detective and rummages through Marta's things. She discovers that Marta has been buying intel from Boucher, because apparently backstabbing is a national sport here. Marta comes home mid-snoop, but Dominika evades detection like a pro. Later, Marta hands Dominika a copy of a report from Volantov to Moscow, basically throwing her under the bus. Dominika realizes she's got enemies in her own camp, as if her day couldn't get worse. The next evening, Dominika follows Volantov to a seedy bar. She confronts him, requesting he write a glowing report about her to Moscow. When he brushes her off like lint on his jacket, she decides to go for the nuclear option. "What's the matter, Maxime? Afraid your balls are too tiny to handle the truth?" she mocks. Volantov snaps and slaps her, not realizing the bar's security cameras are capturing his tantrum in HD. Dominika, now holding all the cards, calmly warns him, "Either you rewrite that report, or I send this footage straight to the cops. Your call." Volantov, thoroughly checkmated, reluctantly agrees. Dominika walks out with a smirk, proving once again that in the game of espionage, she's playing chess while everyone else is playing Go Fish. Nate is at a restaurant, waiting for his date with Dominika, but the only thing showing up on time is disappointment. As the minutes crawl by, he checks his watch, sighs dramatically and mutters, "Guess I'm paying for this overpriced wine alone." Finally convinced he's been stood up, he leaves. What he doesn't realize is that Dominika is tailing him like a discount detective, making sure she doesn't blow her cover. Back at Nate's apartment, the poor guy can't even unwind. His phone buzzes with another coded message, which translates to one word, Vienna. Before he can throw in his coat and head out, the doorbell rings. Surprise, it's Dominika, looking all teary-eyed like she just lost a puppy. Or, is playing another manipulative game. Nate, ever the sucker, lets her in. As they sip drinks, Dominika drops a bombshell, claiming her boss assaulted her. Nate, clearly torn between sympathy and suspicion, asks how she knew where he lived. She cranks up the TV volume like she's suddenly worried about secret microphones, then casually shifts the conversation to, "Hey, so what really happened in that park in Russia?" Nate spills as much as he can, but before things can get too real, Dominika leans in for a kiss. Nate, to his credit, puts the brakes on. "Look, maybe figure out what the hell you actually want before we turn this into some Cold War rom-com," he says, sending her packing. The next day, Dominika gets an unannounced visit from Ivan, who's clearly not here to hand out gold stars. Impatient and probably a little hungover, he demands an update on her progress with Nate. Thinking on her feet, Dominika spins a story about working with Marta on the Boucher case and needing extra funds to keep it going. Ivan, half convinced and probably just wanting her out of his face, agrees. As she fetches his coat, she sneaks a glance at his passport, logging the details like a pro. But the day's drama isn't over. Marta, clearly fed up, storms in later, gun in hand and temper fully unleashed. She's overheard Dominika's lie and isn't having it. "You want to screw me over, bitch?" she snaps. Dominika, staying cool, promises to share the credit and even offers Marta a cut of the extra cash. Marta, not exactly brimming with options, begrudgingly agrees. Fine, she spits, but one slip-up and you're done. Not long after, Dominika heads to Vienna, opening a secret bank account because, hey, spies gotta have backup plans. Meanwhile, Marta, in full petty mode, meets with Volantov to plot Dominika's downfall. But when Dominika returns home that night, she walks into a literal horror show. Marta's dead body in the bathtub, blood everywhere. Before she can even process the scene, Sergei pops out of nowhere, grabs her by the neck, and whispers in her ear like a discount Bond villain, "Call the cops, then forget you ever saw me." And just like that, he vanishes. Elsewhere, Nate is busy spilling the tea in a debrief with his CIA bosses. He tells them about his meeting with Marble in Vienna, who has delivered files confirming what everyone suspected. Dominika is a Sparrow, but instead of writing her off, Nate's convinced she could flip and be a valuable asset. His bosses exchange looks, clearly wondering if Nate's playing chess or just got charmed by another Russian. Back in Russia, Dominika finds herself in a police interrogation room, playing the stoic ice queen while the cops try to crack her. She's tighter-lipped than a locked safe, and no amount of intimidation gets her to spill. When she finally steps out, she's greeted by, surprise, Nate, casually leaning against his car like some knight in shining leather. At Nate's apartment, he doesn't waste time with pleasantries. "All right, Dominika, let's cut the bullshit. You're a Sparrow, aren't you?" Instead of slapping him or storming off, she finally lets her walls down, sharing her story. Beneath all the espionage and games, it's clear she's doing it all for her mother. Nate listens, offering a rare moment of genuine connection. "So, what's the plan? You keep playing their game, or you flip the board?" He proposes she work as a double agent for him, promising protection. Dominika, clearly exhausted from carrying the weight of the world, just sighs. "I need sleep first." She takes his room, but in the middle of the night, she sneaks out and joins Nate on the couch. "Can I really trust you?" "Of course," he replies, and one thing leads to another. Let's just say the couch gets a little more action than it was built for. The next morning, Dominika agrees to Nate's offer, finally ready to flip the script. She heads back to her usual routine, crafting a report so fake it could win an Oscar, claiming she has Nate wrapped around her finger. Later, she waits for Nate's signal, a phone call playing her favorite song. When it comes, she meets with his CIA superiors and endures the nerve-wracking lie detector test. After acing it like a pro, she drops a bomb. She can deliver Boucher. Initially, her request for financial compensation gets laughed off, but when she mentions Boucher, the room goes dead quiet. Suddenly, everyone's on board, and by Friday, they're in London, ready to pull off the operation. Dominika is stashed in a hotel room, decked out with enough surveillance tech to make James Bond jealous. She hides blank discs under the desk, ready for a sneaky switcheroo. While she's sipping at the bar, waiting for Boucher, her plan hits a bump. Volantov shows up, grinning like a cat who just caught the canary. "Thought I'd lend a hand," he says, clearly oblivious to the fact that his presence is like a flashing neon sign screaming danger. Dominika, barely hiding her annoyance, sends him off to wait in her room, muttering under her breath, "You're about as helpful as a hole in a parachute." Shortly after, Boucher arrives, looking as jittery as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. Dominika greets her, introducing herself as Marta's replacement. Naturally, Boucher isn't thrilled. Dominika doesn't flinch and leans in with the kind of confidence that says, "I've got dirt on you." She pulls out incriminating photos and throws in the promise of cash for good measure. Begrudgingly, Boucher complies, and they head to Dominika's room, where Volantov is awkwardly hanging out like an unwanted house guest. Boucher hands over the discs in exchange for a stack of cash, big enough to buy her silence. Dominika pretends to verify the discs on her computer. In reality, she's pulling the old switcheroo, replacing the real ones with CIA dummies. Once the deal's done, Dominika instructs Boucher to sit tight for an hour before leaving. But of course, Boucher doesn't listen. Fueled by a mix of booze and bad decisions, she bails early. Out in the street, paranoia hits Boucher like a freight train, or more accurately, like the actual truck that flattens her moments later. Panicked, she tosses the cash into a trash can, sprints across the road, and bam, game over. From a car nearby, Dominika and Volantov get the news via phone. Volantov, ever the asshole, smirks. Well, that's one problem solved. But the mood sours when he tells her they're being summoned back to Moscow, confiscating her passport like some petty TSA agent. In Moscow, things go from bad to worse. He even snatches the discs and promptly has Volantov arrested. It's clear someone's going down for this mess, and both Volantov and Dominika are suspects. Dominika is dragged into an interrogation room where the questions are sharp and the torture is sharper. But Dominika, she's unbreakable. Even when they show her a video of Volantov being executed, complete with dramatic, "look what happens to liars" vibes, she doesn't budge. They aim the gun at her next, pulling the trigger for effect, but it clicks empty. Nice try, assholes. Enter Ivan, the master manipulator. But Dominika's no slouch either. She flips the script, working him like a marionette until he grudgingly agrees to let her go. She returns home to her mother, but the guilt and trauma hang over her like a storm cloud. When her mom moves in for a hug, Dominika freezes. She's too stained by everything to feel clean anymore. Not long after, Ivan has a tense meeting with Korchnoi and Zakharov before heading home. But surprise, Dominika's waiting for him, cool as a cucumber. She informs him that her mission with Nate has been greenlit. Ivan, please, tells her to get to work. She kisses him, a quick, calculated move, and disappears into the night. Back in Budapest, Nate isn't buying Dominika's sudden release. "You get out of Russian custody that fast?" "Yeah, pull the other one," he says, suspicious as hell. Dominika counters with her own game, convincing him to arrange safe passage for her and her mother to America, along with a hefty payday. Nate, finally satisfied, agrees, and the two share an intimate moment. Later that night, Dominika hears a noise. She finds Sergei in the kitchen, torturing Nate like it's his full-time job. Dominika keeps her cool, pretending to join Sergei in roughing up Nate. She even delivers a few convincing blows, her face blank as a poker pro. But the second Sergei lets his guard down, she flips the script. A brutal struggle follows, but it ends quickly when Sergei loses his footing. Dominika seizes the opportunity, stabbing him without hesitation. The fight is over, but the damage is done.
The next morning, Dominika wakes up in a hospital bed, bandaged but alive. While sneaking out for a cigarette, she's approached by Korchnoi, who drops a bombshell. He's Marble, the infamous mole. "You've got to be fucking kidding me," her expression seems to say, but Korchnoi presses on. Knowing his time is short, he proposes a deal. Expose him, take his place, and become a hero and a spy. Dominika listens, her face unreadable. After Korchnoi leaves, she checks on Nate, still unconscious, before slipping out quietly. Her next move? Only she knows. Determined to turn the tables, Dominika marches into the lion's den, surrendering herself to the authorities like a boss. "Take me to your ambassador," she demands, like a spy version of Karen asking for the manager. When she's dragged before him, she doesn't flinch. "Call Zakharov," she says, her voice dripping with confidence. "Tell him I've got the name of the mole. But here's the deal. Freedom for me, or your little secret gets spilled." Later that night, the drama shifts to an airport, because where else do high-stakes betrayals go down? Dominika arrives flanked by guards, with Nate by her side, looking like he's been sucker-punched. He's convinced she's been playing him like a fiddle. Seriously, Dominika? After all this shit? But she's got a hidden ace up her sleeve. As the Russians roll up, the tension is thicker than a bad Tinder date. The mole is dragged out, hooded like they're about to get executed on live TV. Everyone holds their breath as the hood comes off, and bam! It's not Korchnoi, it's her slimy Uncle Ivan. Dominika's been running a long con since day one, planting enough fake evidence to make Ivan look guiltier than a kid caught with chocolate on his face. Nate, still fuming, suddenly gets it. "Son of a bitch," he mutters, realizing she's been playing 4D chess while everyone else was stuck on checkers. He steps up to confirm Ivan as the mole, and the Russians don't waste a second. A sniper takes Ivan out with one clean shot. No dramatic speeches, no last-minute pleas. Just bang, you're done. With the job done, Dominika is whisked away in a helicopter, leaving Nate on the tarmac with a cocktail of emotions. Back in Russia, she's paraded around like a hero. The government pats her on the back. Her mother finally gets the peaceful life they both dreamed of. And Dominika can finally breathe, or so it seems. In the film's final moments, her phone rings. She picks it up, and instead of words, she hears that song, their signal. Nate's on the other end, silently reminding her that their game isn't over. Dominika smiles faintly, knowing full well that she's not out of the fire yet. And that, my friends, is how you take a world built on lies, manipulation, and betrayal, and flip it on its head. Dominika played the long game, outsmarting everyone, her enemies, her allies, even us watching. She turned a life that was supposed to break her into one where she holds all the cards. Revenge, served. Freedom, earned. And let's not forget, she made the Russian intelligence machine look like a bunch of amateurs while doing it. So, whether it's sparrows, hawks, or whatever the hell kind of bird they're training next, one thing's for sure. Dominika Egorova flew higher than any of them. Thanks for sticking around till the end. Let us know your favorite moment, or better yet, how you'd survive a twisted game like this. See you in the next one.